Utter domination from Arteta's Arsenal as they shot to the top of the Premier League courtesy of a 5-0 win that showed exactly why the Gunners might win the title this season. But what exactly made Arsenal unstoppable in this match tactically? Let's take a look. Despite the scoreline, it's Arsenal's ability to dictate the match without the ball that I want to begin with. It all began from the Chelsea goal kick, as Arsenal wanted to press the Chelsea backline that looked vulnerable in possession. This was made possible by a few key factors, the first of which being Pochettino's obsession with building with a single pivot, often Caicedo, who is naturally not the best on the ball and would not make himself available to receive the first pass. As Chelsea's backline split, Havertz would position himself ready to press Disasi, and this would be backed up by Odegaard, who would use his cover shadow on the single pivot, with Rice ready to back up that press. We've seen Arsenal use this shape to great success recently, as it means there's only one obvious outlet option, which is to the left centre-back. And because it's the only pass available, Odegaard has already anticipated pressing the man before he even receives it, and Rice is backing up this press on Caicedo. With Saka and White ensuring that the pressing trap is set tight. This scenario could see Badiashile trying to force low percentage passes, leading to some turnovers. With the centre-back not having many options, Gallagher would often look to provide a new passing lane, but the problem of course is with Chelsea trapped in this region, Partey would be more than confident to back this up, making even that pass extremely difficult, and Trossard, knowing that staying wide left would not be of much use, would come infield as well on Fernandes, cutting off yet another option. Nicholas Jackson would look to drop into the midfield at times, but because Mudryk had been coming deep looking to provide an option to the centre-back as well, Saliba could confidently press high, knowing that there was no man spinning in behind him, and in this way Arsenal immediately stifled Chelsea when they looked to play out. This scenario was just as bad when Badiashile looked to play a simple pass into his left back, as Cucurella also looked extremely shaky on the ball in this match, often losing it or playing risky infield passes that Arsenal easily intercepted, allowing them to get into many goal-scoring positions, especially early on. There is almost no such thing as complete perfection, so the rare occasions that Chelsea were able to break this press from Arsenal was when they were pressing and Rice was more occupied with Fernandes rather than backing up the press, meaning that single pivot could then initially receive the ball. And even when they were higher up the pitch, Arsenal were in complete control. Arsenal defended in a fairly flat 4-4-2. But if they had been in this orientation, there would have been an easy 3 versus 2 advantage for Chelsea in the midfield. But helped by taking such an early lead, Havertz and Odegaard could afford to almost be completely passive in the initial phases, knowing that even with all the time in the world, neither centre-back was going to produce an outstanding pass that would change the game state. So now they had an extra man advantage in the defensive phase. This would then force either Caicedo or Fernandes to drop deeper to try get onto the ball and progress the play. But now Chelsea would have lost their man advantage in the midfield, thus allowing Arsenal to then look to press much more aggressively. So it was a catch-22 for the Blues. And interestingly enough, for most of the match it was Caicedo who was the deepest pivot, despite Fernandes being better on the ball. And as a result, Chelsea struggled to progress the ball. Chelsea's use of their fullbacks was also interesting from Pochettino, as they often occupied these deep positions, not contributing too much to the attack, and for the most part, being easily pressed by their opposing winger, rather than looking to invert or be aggressive on the overlap. Cucurella could at times be the exception to this, moving high on the left, allowing Mudryk to operate more centrally, giving Chelsea some glimmer of hope of finding a man between the lines. But instead, most of Chelsea's success came when they found Madueke 1 versus 1 against Tomiyasu, as he could use his dribbling ability to hit the byline, and he got into these dangerous positions fairly often. But with only Jackson to hit and not much support from midfield runners making their way into the box, this rarely resulted in shooting opportunities. As good as Arsenal were out of possession, they were just as lethal in possession. So what did they look to? In deeper phases, Arsenal looked to build with their usual back three, with White tucking in. And in this match, Tomiyasu, rather than sticking out wide, was given the freedom to invert, allowing Arsenal to have the minimum of a box in the midfield. Chelsea's defensive shape would either be a bit of a 4-4-2 or 4-2-3-1, with Gallagher tending to defend Partey in the build-up phase, to give him less space to dictate play. But with Tomiyasu inverting, at times we would see Fernandes looking to back up the play, as Chelsea looked to make that initial central progression quite difficult for the Gunners. But again, flexibility is the name of Arteta's game, and Odegaard, as we've seen throughout the season, is more than happy to drop in as an extra pivot to create a 3 versus 2 in this first phase and potentially receive, allowing Arsenal to move higher up. It is difficult for a midfielder, Caicedo in this case, to back this up, because the Arsenal box means that this would leave a man completely free between the lines. So as a result, Odegaard is often quite effective in helping begin the play. But for the most part, Chelsea did not want Fernandes this high and would rather have him deeper looking to cover Rice. And what this meant was it was Madueke who was following his man infield. And this was part of the reason Arsenal were dangerous from all directions in the attacking third. Havertz was nothing like a traditional forward, and he could drop quite deep, so that Arsenal's midfield was a 2-3, and the centre-backs were hesitant to move up and leave that big of a gap behind the defence. So what this meant is that Arsenal could now have the 3 versus 2 advantage in the final midfield line. And if it was Havertz getting on the ball, he could draw a midfielder. And with this much room to maneuver, we saw the best of Odegaard in terms of chance creation and shot creation throughout the match. But if the Chelsea midfield were looking to cover these scenarios, again, Madueke being this narrow covering his man could lead to 2 versus 1 situations on that left-hand side. And this left Gilchrist with all sorts of problems, as if he came narrow, the switch into Trossard was on. But at the same time, if he stayed wide on his man, Rice would be free to receive initially in space, and once he drew the fullback, he would then be able to play his winger in beyond him. And in fact, this midfield overload and left side overload lead to the first goal. Whereas the left-hand side was all about overloads, down the right, Arsenal's individual quality shone, as one of their main ploys was to get the ball into Saka for a 1 versus 1 as quickly as possible. And this would give them options, as if men did look to cover Saka, it created more room in this region for Odegaard. But if it was a 1 versus 1 scenario, Saka was more than happy to take on his man and drive into the box to create for others or have a shot himself. But the highlight of Arsenal this season has been their positional flexibility. So when Arsenal were high up the pitch, White would rarely stay in this deep position. Instead, they would switch to a back 2, with White looking to use his pace to overlap Saka at the last available moment. And Saka was happy to use his man to then look for a crossing opportunity, or to use the extra space created to then have the opportunity to move infield. And in fact, White's second goal was the perfect exhibition of this late running making a difference. It all remains as tight as ever at the top of the table, and as impossible as ever to predict. Who do you see winning the title? For the managerial tactical score, Arteta moonwalked all over Pochettino, meaning he earns a 9.5, whilst Poch earns a 1.5 out of 10. But drop your ratings down below. If you enjoyed this, check out this in-depth video analysing just how Arteta has evolved his side tactically to take the Gunners even closer to the title. Click on screen now.